Hello everyone and welcome to this 100% free graphic design with Affinity complete course, where I'll teach you the Affinity 3 app and how to do graphic design with it. With projects from making birthday cards with the Pixel Studio, drawing icons with the Vector Studio, putting together a menu in Layout Studio and more, and even some real-world projects from real-world clients. Hopefully, you'll come out of this course being able to do graphic design in Affinity 3. So, without further ado, let's get started. If you haven't yet, make sure to go into affinity.studio in your web browser and click on Get Affinity. Or you can scroll this page if you want to see a quick overview of the app. It will ask you to log in with your Canva account and then you can start installing it. Once you have installed the Affinity app and set it up, this is the first thing that you will see, the welcome screen. This is kind of where you start deciding what project you want to work on. You are given these templates, A3, A4, A5, and so on. And you are also given these quick lessons if you want them. But please don't download them because that will take away my job. Instead, let's look at the other things in this welcome screen. First, if you have made an Affinity account in the past and purchased some assets with it like brushes, you probably want to click on this welcome here, advanced, and link Affinity ID. This will link your Affinity account to this Affinity app here, so any purchases you have made in there can be used in here. There is reasons which is for projects that you have worked on in the past, but since we haven't made a project yet because this is the first time we open the app, then there's nothing here yet. Learn is for these quick lessons I have mentioned in home. There is also my templates to show any of your templates which we will make later in the course, and favorites for any templates you have set as your favorite. Let's go back to home. Here, there is one more thing. This portrait and landscape option here for these templates. You can either choose the landscape or the portrait version of these templates, or you can click on See More. This will take you to a huge list of all these templates. From page sizes like the A3, A4, A5, the photo sizes, video and web sizes, and more. And if you want to return to the earlier screen, you can click on this home icon in here. Now, this See More button is actually the same as this green plus button. Both takes you to this list of templates you can start working with. But as you can see, this screen has all of these complicated settings, and I think it would be a bit too overwhelming for a beginner. So let's start with something simple. If we click on this folder icon in here, we can actually open any images that we want, that we have saved on our computer. Here I have already downloaded an image which we will be using for the first parts of this course. You can download it through the link in the description. And once you do, what you want to do is to find the file and click open on it. Once you have opened up the image, then you will be taken to this user interface where you can start editing and working on your image. For now, so let's just make sure that our user interface or our UI for short is the same. First, let's go ahead and look on this at the top left here. We have these 4 tabs here: Vector, Pixel, Layout, and Canva AI. These are called studios, and they are different ways Canva layouts Affinity tree for different use cases. Vector Studio is where you want to make icons, logos. Pixel is where you want to edit images. And Layout is where you want to make menus, brochures, flyers, etc. Since we will be working on this image here, that just means we need to make sure we are on Pixel Studio. So just make sure to click that until it's highlighted in pink like this. And for good measure, let's right click on it and then click on Reset Pixel to Master, which will reset the Pixel Studio to make sure it looks like how it was in the beginning. And then let's look at these 2 options. This is Vector View Mode and Pixel View Mode. Since we are in the Pixel Studio, we will be using Pixel View Mode, so just make sure that is highlighted. Now, you might love to work on this image already, but we're actually going to do that in the next video. For now, I just want to make sure we are on the same page starting off this course. By the way, just in case you ever get lost at any point in the course, I encourage you to join my Discord. It's not exactly a place to chat, so you can do that if you want. It's more of a place where you can ask for help. So if you ever get stuck at any point in the course, you can go into this help channel, make a post detailing what you are struggling with, and hopefully you'll get help. Don't worry, I don't judge anyone for asking questions no matter how big or small. So if you are ever stuck, then please don't be shy and ask it in the Discord. So to make sure you never miss the rest of this course, please consider subscribing so that you will get notified for the next video. And if you benefit from it, please like the video so you will motivate me to keep this course running. Aside from that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so in the last video, we went through the welcome screen after opening up Affinity for the first time. And today, we are going to start learning the user interface and editing this image. First, if you haven't from the last video, make sure you open up this image. Go into Pixel Studio here, right click, reset it to master. And make sure you are on Pixel View Mode. So let's start with the canvas. The canvas is this huge screen space in the middle where you will be editing your Affinity projects like your images, your artwork. In this case, this is where we will be editing our image. So to start editing our image, we will need to be using a tool. You can think of tools as the features that we use in Affinity to edit, enhance, and erase parts of our image. You can find tools on this left on the left of your screen at this dock panel, which you can just think of as your toolbox. So the technical name would be Tools panel. Here you can see a vertical set of icons, with each icon being a tool. You can hover over one of these icons and see what tool they represent. For example, this mouse cursor icon here pops up a tooltip saying it's the move tool. So select items for moving, rotating, and resizing. Let's try it out. I'll select the tool and then I'll click on this image and then just dragging it around. And that's how we move an image with the move tool. Now, if you have noticed, in the move tool, there is actually this arrow here at the bottom right. What that arrow means is that this move tool is actually grouped with a set of other tools, most of the time with similar functions. To see what the tools grouped with the move tool are, we can click on the arrow and see the set of tools. Starting with the move tool and the other tools grouped with it, such as the perspective tool, mesh warp tool, and the deform tool. You might have also noticed that there is this floating panel just besides our tools panel or our toolbox if you want to call it. This shows other tools that are grouped with the tool you currently have selected. So we know that the perspective tool is grouped with the move tool, so we can see that in here. This panel here is called subtools. I'm sorry for my terrible handwriting. So in total, there is 4 tools that are grouped along with move tool. Now, there is another tool with a whole lot of tools that are grouped with it, and that would be the rectangle tool. So let's select this tool and see, just to see how many other tools would appear in this subtools panel. Boom! Wow, that's a lot of tools. So the rectangle tool is used for drawing rectangles and squares. Let's try it out. So it's a simple tool for making rectangles. But as you can see, there are a lot of other shape tools, as we'll call them, to make shapes like circles, rounded rectangles, diamonds, double stars, and even a QR code and a cat. Let's try making a cat. See? We just made a cat using one of the shape tools that are grouped with the rectangle tool. So you might be wondering, well, how do I know how to use its tool? Well, at the very bottom of the screen, we have this very white bar called the status bar. And this status bar here tells you how to use a tool every time you select another tool. For example, we currently have this cat icon here selected. So now the status bar should be telling us how to use the cat tool to create more cats. So let's look at the status bar and see what we have. drag to create a new cat shape. So if we drag out using our mouse, I'll click and drag, then it should make a cat, just like the status bar said. Currently, I am still holding my left click button, and while I am still holding it, please look at the status bar. Specifically, to the right of drag to create a new cat shape, you will see plus shift to constrain proportions. So what does that mean, really? Well, it means that plus shift means that while I am holding shift, it will constrain proportions, which is just a fancy way of saying that it would make sure that my cat isn't all skewed and thin like this. Look at that. It's ridiculous. So what if I click and drag and then I hold shift? Well, as you can see, no matter how I drag it out, it's not going to be skewed and thin like that other cat. Something that I learned that you also learn just by looking at the status bar while having the cat tool selected. So you're probably wondering, all our cats are white, but what if I want to make, for example, a green cat? Well, we should probably change the settings of the cat tool so that the next cat that we make is green. To change such settings, we have to go up into this bar here called the contextual toolbar. This bar here gives you the settings of the tool that you currently have selected, which in my case, it's the cat tool. It's giving me the settings, including this white color, that any cat that I make will be. Let's try clicking on it. By the way, it's this color here. And then go click into the sliders and play around with them. And hey, look at that. My cat is now green. And if we make another cat, it would also be green. So, that was the settings for the cat tool. How about the settings for another tool? Like maybe this text tool here, the artistic text tool. Well, just by selecting this tool, our contextual toolbar changes to show the settings for making text. For example, the font family here, the font family here, the font color here, which is black, and so on. The status bar says drag or click to create our text. Let's try dragging one out. Maybe this small. Try typing out some text like sa 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 sa. And drag another text, but before that, let's change the font style to be, for example, a bold italic. And hey, look at that. Our text is now a bold italic instead of this regular text. So, at the very right of our screen, we also have a panel studio. And this gives you panels which lets you control a certain aspect of our image. For example, this color panel here at the top, it gives you control over the color of what you currently have selected. Selecting something just means you want to focus on it to edit it, move it, or delete it. So selecting one of the green cats would mean you either want to edit the green cat, move the green cat, or delete the green cat. In this case, we want to edit the green cat's color to another color using the color panel. These cats and the other elements that make up your Affinity project, like images, text like that sa text, shapes like that white shape behind the sa text, are all called objects. So how do we select an object? We go into the move tool here, and then we just click on what we want to select. Maybe I want to change this cat here to be yellow. So I click on it with the move tool, and I will know it is selected when I see these kind of blue white circles here along with this line, this blue line, which connects them all, called the bounding box. And now, since this cat is selected, if we go into the color panel here and we play around with this color triangle, as we can see, we are playing with the color of the green cat. I did say I want to make it yellow, so let's move it to this yellow here. So, and then drag it all the way down, and we have this bright yellow cat. So at the very top of our screen, we have what are called menus, like file, edit, document, etc. What these menus are is that they are groups of commands for certain purposes. For example, the edit menu gives you commands for editing what you currently have selected. For example, deleting what you currently have selected. And the file menu here gives you commands for making or editing files. For example, saving your file, your Affinity project. And if you don't want to lose all your work, then obviously you will save your Affinity project into a file, which we can do from this file menu here and clicking save. You might get this prompt here asking whether you want to save latent save as. This is a topic for another video, but basically we are getting this pop-up because we open up an image rather than making a template. So don't worry too much about this one. Just select save as and save as, and this will take you to your file manager where you can decide where you want to save the Affinity project and maybe even give it a name. I am thinking that I want to edit this image to be a sort of reminder to drink water. Maybe I'll call it water PSA. You can save it anywhere you want. I'll probably save it in any one of these folders. Maybe I'll save it in YouTube, Affinity, maybe this here, water PSA, and save. Alright, there is this bar just below the menus, and it is called the toolbar. This toolbar here is for where you will see the studios that we covered in the last video, like vector pixel layout, and it has many purposes. For one, it shows you certain information like the size of your document, which you can see here, and it also gives you quick access to tools, to certain tools which changes with the studio you are currently in. So we are in the Pixel Studio. There aren't many tools for now. Just for now, okay? But just for this video, let's give the Vector Studio a quick visit. This is the studio for making icons and logos, by the way. Now we want to make sure we are on the Move tool. And then we want to select something in our image. I would probably select this text here, the sa text. Remember, if you want to select something, first make sure you are on the Move tool and click on it. And once we click on this text, we can see all the tools here that we can use on this text. A tool I want to showcase is this transform here. It looks like a triangle split in two. This lets you rotate your selection 90 degrees or actually this is 90 degrees. Yep, it's 90 degrees, or let's rotate it back. You can even flip it. But let's go back to the Pixel Studio and you will see that the tools aren't there anymore. So the tools on the toolbar will be dependent on which studio you are in, but you can customize them later, which we will go over extensively in another video. Alright, that should be it for this video. I hope in the next videos when I tell you, for example, to go into the tools, then you will know to go into the left where the tools are. When I say go into the Panel Studio, you will know to go to the right where the Panel Studio are, and so on. But since the interface is a very crucial part of your Affinity learning journey, I made a downloadable cheat sheet that you can get in the description for completely free. And I encourage you to download it and print it to your wall, or if not, just download it and make sure to refer back to it if you, for example, get lost if I say go into the contextual toolbar and you don't know where to go. There's just one more thing. At the top of the canvas, you will see this text here with the name of your file, which in my case is WaterPSA. And this is kind of like a browser tab where our file, the WaterPSA file we have just created, is currently open. If you open another file, then you will get another tab in here. Let's try that. To open another file, you want to go into the file menu here and then go into open. Or the shortcut for that is Ctrl+O. I'll open this one. And as you can see, we now have two tabs. The WaterPSA file and this other image that we have opened. So in Affinity, you can actually open multiple files and you can access each open project by referring to these tabs at the top of the canvas. Alright, so just a quick quiz before we go. To make sure you've learned from this video, what are tools and subtools? Where do you go if you want to learn how to use a tool? Where do you go if you want to change the settings of a tool you are currently using? How do you save your work into a file? Don't worry if you can't answer all of them right now. Just go back to where you were lost using the timestamps and fill in the gaps. But if you did manage to answer all of them, then legendary. You're a quick learner. And if so, I encourage you to comment all of the answers in the comment section. First one to comment all the right answers will be pinned. Aside from that, thanks for watching. I apologize for the rather lengthy video, but the interface is a rather crucial part of your Affinity learning journey. So I did have to be a bit more comprehensive. But aside from that, take a break because you have earned it, and I'll see you in the next video. So in the last video, I give you a brief overview of what selecting means. It means focusing on something because you want to edit it, move it, or delete it. But let's go a bit more into what that actually means. Selecting something just really means that you are telling Affinity that you want to do something to it. Like for example, maybe you want to do something to this cat here, like deleting it. How do you select something? Well, just like in the last video, you go into the move tool and then you click on it. You will know it is selected when you see a blue line wrapping around the thing along with these circles, these white circles outlined with blue, the blue line being called the bounding box. And once you have it selected, you can do almost anything to it. You can change the color using the color panel here, or you can go into the edit menu and deleting it. So that's really what selecting means. It means clicking on something in the canvas because you want to do something to it, like changing its color or deleting it, both of which is doing something to it. So after I deleted that cat, you probably noticed the bounding box moving over to this reverse sa text. That's normal, don't worry. When you delete something after selecting it, it might select something else automatically. What you select is called a selection. And to deselect, meaning to cancel out any selection that you have so that nothing is actively selected anymore, you just click on a blank space, or you can also press Ctrl plus T. So that cat that I just edited the color of and deleted is called an object. So what are objects? Objects are basically everything in your Affinity canvas. Whether you're making an icon, whether you're drawing an artwork, whether you're editing a photo, anything that you do in Affinity really, it will be made up of these objects. So you can think of objects as the building blocks, the elements that make up your Affinity project. For example, in this water PSA, remember it's a reminder to drink water. The objects here, the elements, the building blocks would be this image here, a woman drinking water, and maybe some text above it that says something like, remember to drink your water, 6 cups a day, or something like that. Now, currently, this text here is just sa, but for now, just pretend it's a friendly reminder to drink water, and not sa. So, now that I want to make this into a proper reminder, a PSA to drink some water, we need to start cleaning it up. there are some objects in here that don't really help the message of drinking water, so we will get rid of it. For example, these two cats here. We made them to play around with the cat tool in the few last videos, but we don't really need them anymore because they don't really help the message of drinking water. So, of course, what we can do, make sure we are on the move tool so we can select objects and select the cat to let Affinity know you want to do something to it, which in this case is deleting it. Now, I told you that you can go into the edit menu and click on this delete to delete it. But instead of that, a much faster way is that you can actually look into to the right of delete and you will see backspace. And if you see a keyboard key to the right of a command in menu, it usually means that's the shortcut. In this case, backspace. So let's close down the edit menu and just try, while we still have the green cat selected, backspace. Oh, and it automatically selected the other cat. That's nice. So let's just go ahead and click backspace one more time. And now let's deselect and let's consider if these two texts here, the sasa text, are needed. We do need to place some text here that says to drink your water, but sasa isn't really how do I say this? It's not really a message that you can interpret as the fact that drinking water is good, so you should probably do it. So we should probably click on them with the move tool to select them. Let Affinity know that you want to do something to it, which is deleting it. And then deleting it. Now, how about this rectangle? Well, it's just a blank white rectangle. There's not really much to it, so we'll just go ahead and delete it. And we are back at the very first starting point when we first open up this image. Now, we are only left with this one object, this image. But what if I also accidentally delete it, just like I did all the other objects? Well, that's clearly not what I wanted to do, because we need this image for our water PSA. So I wish I could go back in time and undo that, if to say. Well, thankfully, in the edit menu, there is a command to undo something that you did and you probably regretted doing, which is undo. And the shortcut for that, as you can see, is Ctrl+Z. So let's close the edit background and try pressing Ctrl+Z. So undo will undo anything that you accidentally done. Like for example, let's say we go into the rectangle tool and we make a rectangle that is way too big like this, that covers up the lady, and we wish we hadn't done that. We just press Ctrl+Z. Now before you ask, unfortunately the undo command doesn't undo horrible life decisions, so you probably still have to think your life decisions very clearly, because there is no command to undo them. Now, what if we didn't delete the image here, but we did something else? Like for example, we move this out of the canvas, which, as you can see, any objects that are outside the canvas is pretty much invisible. Well, now we can't even see the image, so how do we find it? we can go into view, the view menu, and then click on clip to canvas. Now any objects that are outside the canvas will no longer be invisible. But our image is all the way there. How do we even move there? Well, if you hold the spacebar button and then drag around using left click, you can move around the canvas. You can move around this space where your canvas is and find any objects that went out of your canvas. You can also hold down middle mouse button, which is the scroll wheel. So hold down the scroll wheel and you can, as you can see, also move around the space where your canvas is. And now that we can reach our image, we just have to move it back to the canvas. But now we are kind of stuck here, aren't we? Our canvas is to the left. Are we really going to be working on our image while it's on the left like this? Well, thankfully, no. We don't have to do that. We can go into the view menu and we can go into zoom. We have a few options here: in, out, to fit, etc. You just have to click zoom to document and it will zoom out so that the center of this space here is at the center of your canvas. And we are back to normal. But what if we want to zoom in even more? We can hold Control and scroll up. And maybe we want to move to this ring here because we want to put a rectangle over this ring or something. And we just have to click hold down on Control again and scroll down to zoom back out. And we zoom too much like this, we just have to go back into view, zoom, and to document, or as you can see, the shortcut is Control plus Alt plus Shift plus 0. Or maybe that's too many shortcuts, that's too many keys you have to press at once. So you wish it was easier. Well, thankfully, we can go into the move tool and click on something that we want to zoom into. So for example, this image, we can just select that, go into view, zoom, to selection. The shortcut for that is much easier. Control plus Alt plus 0. Okay, that should be it for this video. Let's just get rid of this rectangle since we just made that as an example of what to do when you're zooming in. And into our quick quiz to make sure you've learned. So, what is selecting something? What does it mean to select something? What are objects? What is undo and what is the shortcut for it? How do you move and zoom in or out through the space where the canvas is? Just like before, if you can answer one of these questions, just make sure to play back the part of the video where you didn't understand or ask it in the comments or in the Discord. Otherwise, if you can answer all of these, legendary. Make sure to write down your answers in the comment section. And if you're right, I will pin your comment. And I'll see you in the next video. So in today's video, I want to start filling up this image with some text to remind you to drink water, and I'll give you a bit of an overview about the panels, in the panel studio, and also about layers. So let's start filling this up with something. I will start filling this up with text using the artistic text tool. The icon for that looks like this T here. Then I'll just drag out maybe this big and start typing drink water. So you can probably tell, but currently it's kind of hard to read this text. It it blends with the background. So we should probably give it some kind of background, which I will do by giving it a rectangle behind the text. So I'll go into the rectangle tool and just drag out a rectangle over the text. And wait, it just covered my text. Well, that's clearly not what we want. We want the text to be above the rectangle, not the other way around. So that's where we will need to understand what layers are, which you can see in the panel studio in these layers. You can just click on it just to double check you are in this layers panel. And we can start looking at what's inside. First is background, which is our image. Drink water, the text that just says drink water that we made. And the red rectangle that is covering the drink water text right now. If you have probably noticed, these are all the three objects in our image. And in the layers panel, they are arranged into layers. The rectangle object is currently above the drink water object in the layers panel. That's why it's covering the text instead of the text being above the rectangle. To change that, all we have to do is to click on the layer containing our drink water text object and drag it up until you see this blue highlight above the rectangle layer. And once you do that, as you can see, our drink water text is now above the red rectangle. So you can think of the layers panel as just the panel where you want to arrange your objects. Maybe you want to put another object above another object, such as in this case, putting the drink water text above the rectangle. You can arrange your objects any way you want. Hell, you can even drag this image to the very top and it would cover everything. Even though that's probably not what you want, well, you can still do it if you have to for some reason. So you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between an object and a layer? The difference is simple. An object is, as I have said in the last video, it's everything in your Affinity project from text, images, etc. Layers are just the container for these objects that you move around to be on top or below other objects, other layers, like in this case, moving the background image above all the other layers, making it cover everything else. So definitely don't confuse them. Objects are the elements that make up your Affinity project, like your text, your images, your rectangles, etc. Layers are just containers for these objects. Anyways, we probably don't want our image to be at the very top. So We can drag it down like we did before, or we can select the layer just by clicking on it and then pressing Ctrl, Shift, and left bracket key, which moves the layer all the way down. The opposite of that would be Ctrl, Shift, and right bracket key, which moves it all the way up. If you only want to move it down one time, so dragging it below this layer instead of going all the way down there, you just press Ctrl and left bracket key. The opposite of that, Ctrl plus right bracket key. It's at the very top again, so let's bring it down using Ctrl Shift plus left bracket. Now let's talk a bit more about panels because I realized we haven't talked about it much in the last video about the user interface. Panels control certain aspects of your project, like how layers control the arrangement of layers in your Affinity project, and the color panel, just as we have seen in the last few videos, controls the color of what you currently have selected. You probably noticed, but besides the layers, there are other text below it: channels, brushes, and stock. These are actually separate panels in the same space that you can access by just clicking on it. Now we are in the channels panel. Let's click on the brushes panel, and we are in the brushes panel. If we double click on the panel, it will kind of collapse it to make space for other panels like this navigator panel here. We can bring it back, no worry, just by clicking on the panel again. Now, we know from the user interface video that this space where we find all our panels are called the Panel Studio. But you might have noticed that these panels are actually split into 3 groups. One, this one with the histogram and color panels. Two, the one with our layers panel. And 3, with navigator, transform, and history. These are actually called panel groups. Now, you might not like that the layers panel is currently docked in here. Maybe you wish it was maybe like close to the canvas. Well, here's some good news. Panels don't have to be docked like this here. You can actually drag them out. Just drag out the layers panel, and here we are. It's now in its own space near the canvas. So this layers panel here is alone. But what if you want to dock another panel here? Well, thankfully you can just do that by dragging out the other panel you want to move there, and then put it just like that besides layers. And if you want to close a panel, you can click on where the panel currently is. You will see this down arrow. You want to go ahead and click on close. Don't worry, we can always recover the channel and other panels by going into the window menu where we can see all of our panels. We just have to find it within one of these groups. It's in the pixel one. And then we just have to click on channels. And our channels panel is back. Now, each of these spaces where you will see the panels that they are called panel groups. And just like the panels themselves, you can actually drag out the panel group themselves. And you can even dock it somewhere within your screen, which just means anchoring it by dragging around until you see one of these blue highlight appearing, like this one here. That blue highlight will tell you where the panel group would be anchored, would be docked. And now it's in here, and oh, we have the find and replace panel here. I think this appeared in one of the last videos, but it was an accident. So let's close this panel group here since it's just showing this find and replace panel that I didn't even mean to open. And there we go. Anyways, now with that out of the way, as you can see, the panel group that had navigator in it is now docked to this side of the screen. And you will notice that the panel groups that are not docked like this actually have this X here. That's for closing the panel group. But don't worry, they didn't disappear. And if you like where they were, you don't have to reposition it either, because you can open one of the panels in there back again in the window menu, like layers, and it will be in the where you left it before you close the panel group. I think a good way to understand how panels work is just going into your favorite web browser, because panels work very similarly to browser tabs, in that you can have one open or you can have more than one tab open. You can drag out one of these tabs. You can dock them to the right or to the left or anywhere in your screen. Alright, time for our quick quiz as usual. What are layers? What are the different ways you can move a layer up or down? What are panel groups? Can you drag a panel out of its panel group? Comment all the right answers and I'll pin you. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so I want to go a bit more in detail about the move tool. Just a recap, it is the tool that you use to select objects and to move them around, as the name suggests. But first, let's make the color of this rectangle and the text a bit more fresh, waterly like. I'll change the rectangle to this kind of blue and the text to white. So first, we can move objects around with the move tool. With the move tool selected, select an object and then just drag it around. I'll place it here for now. If you hold shift while dragging out the object, then it will lock your movement so that it stays horizontal or vertical. Horizontal just means left or right, and vertical just means up or down. So if I hold shift and move it down, it will make sure I only move it down without moving it to the left or to the right. If I don't hold shift, however, look what happens. I move my mouse slightly to the left and it's already moving to the left. Let's bring it back to this rectangle. If we hold Alt while dragging out an object, it will make a copy of it on the spot. So let's go ahead, hold Alt and then drag out this text. And now we have 2 instances of the drink water text, so we probably just need one, so I'll delete this one. Okay, so we move the drink water text around, but what if we also want to move the rectangle? Well, good news, we can actually select more than one object at once. So notice that I have the drink water text selected, as we can see, because the bounding box is wrapping around it. If I also want to select this rectangle at the same time and any object really, I will hold shift and then click on it. And I will know it is selected because the bounding box is on both of these objects. It's not too visible right now, so I'll change the rectangle to a green just for a minute. And then select this drink water text, hold shift, and select this rectangle as well. As you can see, the bounding box, the blue box, wraps around both the drink water text and this green rectangle. Oh, and if you have noticed, in the layers panel, we can even see what objects are selected by looking at which layers are highlighted blue. So the layers containing the drink water text and the green rectangle are blue, that means they are selected. And now we can move them around at the same time. We can even change both their color at the same time. But as you can see, that's not a good idea because it kind of just blends them both together. So I'll hit Ctrl C to undo that and also change the rectangle back to that earlier blue. So you're probably wondering what these circles surrounding the bounding box are for. Well, they are for scaling and rotating. Let's start with scaling. I will select the drink water text, and then I will go ahead and drag around one of these white circles, and as you can see, they are scaling it up and down. Oh, and if you scale it down way too much, like you push it past the circle, it kind of flips on itself. I think I'll scale down my text a little bit. So I'll drag out this circle. And we kind of have a problem. The scaling is kind of going all the way to the top left. But I want it to scale down to the center, not towards the top left corner. And to do that, first I'll undo that. We can hold Ctrl while dragging out one of these circles. And as you can see, it scales down towards the center instead of one of the corners. So, scaling down towards the center. Now, if you try dragging out one of these circles at the left or right, as you can see, it constrains the proportion so that it doesn't stretch out the object, so to speak. But what if you do want to stretch the object anyway? Well, you can hold shift and then it will stretch out your object instead of just scaling down or up while constraining the proportions. And as you can see, it really looks ridiculous. You probably don't want this, and neither do I, so I'll undo. Now, to rotate an object, you want to hover over one of the corners of the bounding box, and then you want to pay attention to your mouse cursor. Currently, my mouse cursor is this two-way straight arrow, but I move slightly away from the corner, and it's the same two-way arrow, but now it's gay, or maybe bisexual since it's two arrows. Either way, it's not straight anymore. And once you see your cursor change into that, you can drag around the object to rotate it. Whee! Okay, so It's not really a clean rotation, but we can hold shifts and the rotation will snap to 15-degree increments. So as you can see, this rotation is much more controlled and elegant. Now, you can also hold the drag. Let's rotate it a little more. If we double click, we can actually reset the rotation so that it's back to normal. And you know what? I think it would be great if we use this rotation to make a cup of water. So let's go into the rectangle tool and see the options for the shapes that we can use as a cup. There's this triangle, trapezoid. I think I'll use the trapezoid. It's pretty similar to the rectangle tool, just drag out. And it's currently upside down, which we can just fix by rotating it. Hold shift to rotate it to 15-degree increments. And we get a clean 180 rotation. And now this looks like a proper cup. We probably just need to scale this down and place it somewhere more proper. Maybe I'll scale down this rectangle and the text. I will select them both, but instead of using Shift and clicking them both, I can actually drag out a box that will select any object that it touches. So as you can see, that box just selected the rectangle and the text at once, but it also selected the background because it also touched the image. But don't worry, using the same Shift button to make more selections, we can use it to take out any object from our selection. Just hold Shift and click on the object you don't actually want to select, like the image. Then I'll scale this down to the left. Oh, it's stretching it out, not scaling down and constraining the proportions. Well, sometimes scaling down or up an object will actually stretch it instead of constraining the proportions, even if you aren't holding Shift. If that happens, just go ahead and hold Shift. And it will constrain proportions again. Now we'll do the same for this trapezium cup. I'll hold Shift to constrain the proportions since it was stretching and drag it to the right of this rectangle. So just a couple of other things to know. First of all, these white circles surrounding the bounding box are called nodes. Let me type that out. Nodes. And you see that there is actually one node that sticks out. This is actually the node that you use for rotating if you don't want to rotate using one of the corners. And by the way, I'll scale down this image for a bit. Scale down a little. If you hover your mouse over one of the nodes that aren't the corners, your mouse cursor turns into these two arrows, which is for shearing your selection. And to understand what shearing means, let's just do it. So hover your mouse until it looks like this and drag around the image. So it's basically skewing your image around like that. Your selection, sorry. And just like with rotation, you can double click on it to reset it to normal. And if you hold Ctrl while doing it, you can actually skew it from the center. So it skews out evenly like that. You can also do this for the other two nodes to the left and right of your bounding box, and it will skew your image like that instead. Anyways, I'll spam undo until we get our image back to normal. What are the two ways you select multiple objects at once in this video? How do you move your selection horizontally or vertically? How do you scale up or down your selection? How do you rotate your selection? And how do you make sure it snaps to 15-degree increments? What are the white circles in the bounding box called? Comment all the right answers to get pinned and move along to the next video where I'll see you. Okay, sorry about the pun. Okay, so our PSA is basically done. I think I just want to get rid of the upper part of this image since there's nothing in it. We can do that using the crop tool just below the move tool. This lets you crop your canvas, and cropping in image editing just means removing unwanted areas of your canvas. Click on the tool and we get a box around the canvas with these squares. These squares are how you crop out the unwanted areas out of your canvas. In this case, I want to crop the upper areas of this canvas. So I will drag this square at the top down. Now, this upper area here is cropped out. But if we want to apply the cropping, we will go into the left of the contextual toolbar and click apply. And now, as you can see, it got rid of that area out of our canvas. The tooltip that pop-up says it does it non-destructively. But what does non-destructively mean? It just means that the cropping that we made isn't permanent. We can't undo it anytime without using the undo command that we know with Ctrl+Z. And we can see that if we go back into the crop tool, as you can see that area that we just cropped out is still there. Affinity hasn't gotten rid of it. We can get it back anytime we want just by dragging it up again. Oh, and you can even drag outside the canvas to get more canvas space in case your canvas is actually too small instead. Let's apply to see what happens. Now we have this area that's just blank with nothing in it. We can place anything that we want in it, like maybe placing another cup of water. Yep, we can totally do that. But I think I'll stick to what we had earlier. I'll hit Ctrl+Z to undo until we are back here. Now your canvas will usually have what is called an aspect ratio, which is just the ratio of the height and width. We can lock the cropping to our certain aspect ratio in the crop tool using this drop down here. And then going into our custom ratio. We can set the aspect ratio here manually, or we can use one of the templates here. Let's try the template first. An aspect ratio of 1 out of 1 means the canvas is as wide as it is tall, so like a square shape. And we can also drag around the cropping just like this. A ratio of 2 to 1 or 2 by 1 means the canvas will be twice as wide as it is tall. And we can see that if we use the 2 plus 1 ratio here, and we place two equal size squares on the image. So 1, 2. So 2 equal size squares to show that it is 2 times as wide as it is tall. And so while we have this aspect ratio, no matter how you drag out the squares here, it will always be locked to that aspect ratio of being 2 times as wide as it is tall. And by the way, aside from dragging out one of the squares, you can drag the middle of the crop here and move it around manually like this. If you want the exact measurements, there is this information here about the crop. The crop will be 248 pixels by 124 pixels. We'll learn about pixels in a later video. Just know that it is a unit of measurement for images. Oh, and I probably don't want to use this crop since it only has her face. So I'll go ahead and click cancel instead of apply. Oh, and by the way, there was one more option in the drop down, original ratio, which will just maintain the current aspect ratio you have before you click on the crop tool. So instead of a new aspect ratio, you just drag it down and it maintains the aspect ratio. Let's go back to a custom ratio of 2 to 1. And by the way, you can set any ratio you want in here. So maybe I'll do 3 by 1 instead. And let's say you want the opposite of this, where it is taller, not wider. You would use this button here to switch from your crop being taller or wider, which you might know as portrait and landscape. So click that once, we get a portrait crop. Once again, we get a landscape crop. Maybe you want to change it back to how it was before. There is this button to reset the crop settings we have set back to what it was before we used the crop tool. Now there was one more option in that drop down, which is resample, but this is a bit advanced and I think it will be best if we return to this after we cover exporting. And pixels. Now, there is one more button in here, straighten, and this basically straightens out anything in the crop. So for example, pay attention to this sleeve here. It's blocked by the rectangle, but you can probably see it, but it's facing diagonally like this. Using this button, however, we can click on it and draw a line, and it will straighten out that leaf. Boom, as you can see, that leaf here is now a straight line like this. But obviously this doesn't look like anything that you want. That's because this feature is best used for subtle adjustments. Let's reset it, click straighten again, or actually, instead, I want you to notice that this kind of fence here is not so straight. And instead of clicking on that button, I can use the shortcut control and just drag out to straighten right away. And now that fence is straighter. Or maybe I want to use it on this fence outside, that also works. I think I'll just stick to what I had before, so I'll reset. Now, besides the reset button, there is this drop down for grids. None gives you no grid. Thirds give you a 3 by 3 grid. And there are 3 other grids: 5 grid, golden spiral, diagonals. They all serve the same purpose of helping you with the composition of your Affinity project. So we know anything outside of the crop like this upper area is dark, but if you don't want it to be dark, you can click on this toggle here. This is darken border. You toggle it off and it's no longer dark. Also, there's refill canvas over here and it basically refills anything that is outside the crop. You turn it off, that upper area is gone. And now, time for our quiz. So, what is cropping in image editing? What does non-destructive means? What is an aspect ratio? For example, what does an aspect ratio of 2 by 1 means? Comment all the right answers to get pinned, and I'll see you in the next video. So I'm done with my PSA, and if you are done with your Affinity project, usually you would do what is called exporting it so you can share it with others. You can export it using this button at the toolbar, export PNG. You can click on it right away, or you can also click on this arrow to get a few more settings. So just clicking on this export PNG is fine, so I'll do just that. I'll save my file as maybe water PSA2. Or actually, since this is the export I will share, I'll just go make it a bit more detailed. PSA to drink water. And click enter. It will show that it's loading the export. And there we go. This here is the file you can share in Discord, WhatsApp, social media, anywhere really. And if we double click on it, as you can see, this image is our hard work. It doesn't seem like much, but we learned a lot about Affinity in our journey to make this image. So be proud of it, okay? Now, since this is a tutorial for complete beginners, I want to go over the difference between saving and exporting. So, if you already have some experience with other design software and you already know what saving and exporting means, well, it's the same in Affinity. So, if you already know what saving and exporting means from other design graphic software, feel free to skip this video. For those of us who are still learning, let's go back to Affinity and take a quick look at the layers panel. Here we have the trapezoid, drink water, rectangle, and the image, and each of them we can still edit, like for example, dragging it around with the move tool or changing its color. But if we open up that image we exported or .png file, as you can see, there's nothing we can really do to it right now. There's no move tool here to move around the rectangle or the text. There's no color panel, no layers panel. It's done. It cannot be edited anymore. That's because all the layers here containing all these objects have been flattened into one single image. And we can see that if we go back into this .png file we just exported, right click, open with Affinity. So this open up a new tab in Affinity here, which is our PNG file. And look at our layers panel. As you can see, there are no layers and no objects beside this one single flattened image. And that's what exporting does. It saves your Affinity project into an image file, a single image file that you won't be able to edit anymore. However, that one single flattened image is what you share with others. So this PNG here, even though you can't edit it anymore, that's on purpose because this is the image you will share with others, whether you post it in Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, social media, Discord, anywhere really, for people to look at your finished work, not edit it. It is basically the finished picture. Now, let's go back to Affinity and close it. WaterPSA has been modified, and this is actually an important note. It asks if you want to save your changes. And I'll click yes, just to demonstrate what saving means. And note, saving is different from exporting. Now that our Affinity app is closed, let's go back to where you save your WaterPSA file and double click it. Now, unlike when we double click that .png file to open it up, once we double click this Affinity file abbreviated to .ef file, we still have the layers from before: the rectangle, the text, the cup, and the image. All these objects are still here and they are still editable. And notice that our rectangle is pink because we played around with it earlier and we made it pink. That's what saving is for. It is for saving changes to your Affinity work, and those changes are saved into a file. That file is the waterpsa.af file we created a long time ago. Well, not a long time, probably like 5 videos earlier, but you get what I'm saying. So, both exporting and saving creates a file that you can open. The difference is exporting creates a finished flat image you cannot edit anymore, while saving creates a file you can still edit and make changes to. So you might be wondering, well, in that case, why not just keep saving and never export? To understand that, let's right click on the PSA to drink water and then open it with whatever you use in your computer to open up an image. In my case, it's Irfan View 64-bit, and it opens up the image that we just made normally. Now, let's close it and open up our waterpsa.af file. And boom, going into open with, we can see that the only app we can open it with is Affinity. On the other hand, if we right click on this PNG file and go into open with, we have a lot of other options: Irfan View, Photos, which are both apps for viewing images. So, you can probably guess what .ef files, which you create by saving your work, is a file that can only be opened exclusively only with the Affinity app. it cannot be viewed on any computer, on any device that doesn't have the Affinity app installed. To further demonstrate the difference, I have here 3 files. This is my Affinity project. I made a simple call to action for you to like and subscribe. Besides that is an exported image that I exported from this Affinity project file. And just besides that is a random 7-zip file. It's not an image or a video, but it will help understand the difference better. So I am in Discord, and the first thing that I will do is upload that 7-zip file. Now, what happens when Discord doesn't see an image or a video in your file? Well, you get this icon here like this. Let's click enter and see what it looks like when we upload it and post it anyway. Well, we have this embed file here. There's no image or video here, just the file. Now let's upload an image, which would be this .png file. And when we upload it, as you can see, Discord gives you a preview. This is its way of saying, hey, I see an image/video in this file, and I can upload it here. So let's go ahead and click enter. Now what happens when we upload the Affinity project file? Well, we get the same result from uploading this. Instead of the image that is in the Affinity project file, we just get this icon. And even when we upload it, we still won't see any image. Now, so to recap, if you want to share your hard work in Affinity, the finished work, you want to share the exported image. If instead you want to, instead you try to share the Affinity project file instead, well, they won't be able to open it up unless they have the Affinity app. However, that doesn't mean it's useless to share your Affinity project files in Discord or anywhere else, because if you are sharing your project file with a fellow Affinity designer, they can edit your work with some improvements. They can then save that into a project file to share with you. So it's kind of like useful for collaborating on Affinity. Alright, so for our quiz, there's only one question. What is the difference between saving and exporting? That's really it. But other than that, I'll see you in the next... not video, actually. Because guess what? You just finished this project. It might not seem like much, but you did it. You finished your first project in Affinity while learning a lot about how to use it. So a round of applause for you. You did it. And if you're still excited to become a graphic designer using Affinity, then I'll see you in the next project.